What's up, sons and daughters? We are here, week 7, with the crew from the Locks of Saturday, Chris, Robert, and Brett. Guys, week 7, it's crazy enough, but we are almost reaching the halfway point of the college football season. How are we feeling so far? Outside of the Hokies, how are we feeling about this season so far?
This is where it starts to get really fun. We got all those like cream puff matchups, all the McNeese States and Mercers and teams like that out of the picture. We're playing real football. I love it.
This is where it also gets really hard to pick the spread.
Well, are you sure it gets really hard now? Because it's been pretty difficult for us so far,
It's
guys.
hard enough for us already.
I
can only go up from here.
I want to remind the listeners out there that we're not choosing the best value games week to week. We're choosing the most high profile games week to week, which usually are the hardest games to pick. So anything near a 50% is considered a win in and of itself. Anything above that, congratulations. But these are really tough games because they have the most amount of action on them. So the lines are on the margins.
I can probably count on one hand how many double-digit lines outside of Virginia Tech that we've had this year.
It's crazy. This is a really tight slate as well. That logic is great, Chris, but yours truly, if you follow me on Twitter, I have just been cursed with scoop and scores, 1-point losses, weird penalties. But again, half of the season
regression.
Still left, half of the season.
What is it? Instead of regression, it's progression to the norm. We have to sell that to our listeners this week. We're going to
return to the mean
to win people money to the norm.
Exactly.
Here. So that's what we're doubling down on.
Yep. So there's 3 of us tied at 16 and 17 on the show. Myself, Brett, and Chris tied 16 and 17. Robert, you are at 15 and 18, so definitely in shooting range of 500. Ed, who's
after a 4-0-1 week, I gotta say, I really crawled out of the pit.
You did
great last week.
You did. I didn't count the. We all pushed on the Kansas TCU game, which was a 7-point win for TCU. So you can add an and 1 to the end of everyone's records. Ed, 12 and 21. Again, there's a lot of season left. 2 good weeks, and Ed's back to 500. So a couple things before we start. Those are our records. Again, on Twitter, hit us up at Locks of Saturday. We'll try to get some more content on there. And if you don't follow the Sons of Saturday Twitter yet, what are you doing? It's at Sons of Sat VT. And again, if you are listening on Spotify, we are on YouTube. So head over to YouTube if you want to see our really cool backgrounds. I got San Jose State. We got Tulane. We got Idaho. And then Chris has a real interesting background for his. You want to explain that one for the good people?
For those on the YouTube, if you are familiar and you are just a complete sicko, I am representing this week the Barrow, Alaska High School Whalers football team. And if you haven't ever seen it, search the images. It is I can't even say it's the most picturesque because it's not, but it is, out of all of the clay level sand, it is this bright, stark blue and gold, yellow, gold, whatever it is, almost like a McNeese State type styles color scheme. And it's the northernmost football field, I think, in the globe. I'm going to have to get my actual map out and kind of chart it, but it's right on a bay adjacent to the Arctic Ocean. It's awesome. I think they play 7-on-7 football up there just because there's a complete void of human life up there, but it's amazing. And if you haven't at least researched it before, Barrow Whalers High School football is where it's at. Granted, can't get action on the weekly lines. That would be truly degenerate behavior betting on Alaska high school football. I will acquiesce from that.
Well, yeah, definitely do a Google image search of that one. Also, in a couple weeks, the Hokies will be heading down to where I am currently stationed in Raleigh, North Carolina, to play NC State. And if you're going to be in town, head over to the Virginia Tech Alumni Association tailgate. Get yourself some drink tickets. There's a free buffet. You also get to meet some of the Sons of Saturday that will be hanging out there. Should be a really good time. We'll be posted up right outside PNC Arena. More info on that to come on our social media pages. All right, let's get into the games for this week. And we're going to start in the Big Ten East with, quite frankly, maybe one of the biggest games so far of the college football season. Penn State +7 at the Big House at Michigan. This game is the big noon Fox game. So 12 o'clock on Fox. The over-under is 51.5. Brett, get us kicked off from Ann Arbor.
Yeah, this is a tough one. This is probably for me one of the toughest games we've had all year when I kind of look at it, especially at +7. I mean, you're basically betting, a push, in my opinion. I think 7 is is the line for this game. But I'm kind of looking at Penn State and Michigan in two ways. One is who they played. Michigan's actually played nobody. Sure, they played Iowa, but I think I could score on Iowa's I think I could score for Iowa. That's how bad their offense is. So it's pretty abysmal. But they played Maryland. They beat them by a touchdown. They struggled all game. They beat Connecticut 59-0. We know what Connecticut is. Love the Huskies. They're a really hilarious team to bet because out of nowhere they'll cover or win a game like they did 2 weeks ago. And then they played Hawaii, who they're horrible. Then Indiana, who's shown promise in spots, but just still not the team that I think people thought they were going to be. On the other side of the ball, Penn State, they've played some better competition, not great. Auburn, I think, is not great, but they showed out. They dominated a team at an SEC field that was just, the rushing attack was unbelievable. I think looking at that, and they also played at Purdue. At Purdue is a very tough place to play. It's almost, they call Purdue the Giant Slayer, and they almost did. That beat Penn State. They actually should have beat Penn State game 1, but Penn State, I kind of look at a lot of teams. Good teams find a way to win, and I think Penn State's a good team. I think they're kind of a team that's was slept on this offseason because of all the hype between Michigan and Ohio State. People didn't know what was going to happen with Michigan State this year. They knew they were going to be as good, but nobody knew they were going to be this bad. So Penn State kind of, I think, slipped through the cracks a little bit. So I think, with that being said, I think I'm going to stick with – I don't feel great about it, but I think I'm going to go Penn State even at the Big House. I think the rushing attack is too good. I think it's going to be a game. I think combined rushing yards, it's going to be probably close to 400. It's between Blake Corum and then the two-headed monster that Penn State has. So I think I'm still going to go Penn State +7. I think at the least they will push this. I think they could lose by a field goal, and I think they do have a chance to win this game outright as well.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think it's because, again, like you said, Michigan. I think Michigan is Penn State. They're very similar teams.
Yeah.
But I feel like Michigan just has that higher ceiling, and they're playing at home. I am a little bit worried about Michigan's lack of competition so far, and I think it's gotten to them. You've seen the last couple of weeks, they've been slow to start. Looks like they haven't really been getting up or hype for games. I don't think they'll have an issue with this one, so that's why I'm going to go with the Wolverines. Penn State also 2-6 against the spread in their last 8 versus Michigan. Michigan's kind of they've come out and played this rivalry really well. Looks like Harbaugh has a good idea about how to beat this Penn State team and beat them well. The matchup for this game is the Penn State offense, which has been good but inconsistent this year, going up against a Michigan defense that's one of the best in the country. Have they been tested? Not really, but also, has Penn State really been tested on offense? Probably not. Their toughest matchup was against the Weather last week when they played Northwestern and scored 17 points. So I'm going to go with Michigan, this one, playing at home in the Big House. It is a tough line. I wish I was getting 5.5 or 6 on this one. So if your sportsbook allows you to tease this one and you're thinking about Michigan, I would maybe go towards 5.5, 6, because it should be a pretty close game. But I'm going to go with the Maize and Blue at home in this one.
Sam, in agreement here. For me, Michigan -7 was the ultimate example, especially after I looked at the actual metric kind of differentiation between both teams of bet the number. And anytime that you get a really good team versus kind of a semi-competent team, and I'm getting at a touchdown or lower value in betting the better team. I'm in college football, and this is in the NFL. In college football, I'm probably going to take that team, especially when that team is at home. If you look at the metric gap, it actually justifies the spread. If this game were reversed and you had Michigan on the road, that's that 6-point kind of switch. It would be Michigan was it -1 in Happy Valley, we would be looking at this game completely different as a no-brainer Michigan choice if it was on the road in Happy Valley as well. So if I'm getting a -7 line, to me, the spread should be more like Michigan -10 plus. So that's where I found the value in betting this matchup. If I'm looking at just PFF, Michigan right now as a team, 95.5 compared to Penn State's 86.2. And really, if you're looking at where that disparity gap is, it is the better Michigan defense versus the Penn State offense. It's a 93 to 73.6 metric differential. That's a pretty significant margin. It's much more even for Michigan's offense versus Penn State's defense. Both are really good units. The composite rating, I had mentioned it a few weeks ago, but this is via Twitter. Another, once again, shout out to whoever Nate Manzo is. You do yeoman's work for us college football bettors, but he aggregates S&P Plus, FPI, DataRank, FEI. If you follow the college football winning edge, as well as the Ford metric rating as well, Michigan top 5, they're 5th. Penn State good, but they're 12th, so they're outside the top 10 there. And then you look at SRS, which I value really when I'm looking at if it's like the composite is favoring one team, if PFF is favoring another, I look at SRS as kind of a tiebreaker. This was the one where the outlier was favoring Penn State. Michigan was actually 23rd and Penn State was 11th. But the actual rating differential is there's a little bit of a clog there in that kind of teens area where Michigan is at 12.9 and Penn State is at 15.9. And I really feel like Penn State gets that inflated number because they beat Purdue, and that's the best overall win between these two teams. I tend to devalue week 1 wins just because who knows what happens in week 1. But as the teams kind of have a little bit more of a performance graded, you hit the nail on the head, both of you earlier. Penn State and, for the most part, definitely Michigan haven't really played anybody to date. So this is just strength of schedule and performance against those weaker opponents. I have to believe that just Michigan has performed stronger against worse opponents than Penn State has performed against semi-worse opponents. And when in doubt, the ultimate tiebreaker for me always comes down to fade the public. And right now, Penn State is getting 63% of the public action betting volume right now. So once again, everything kind of considered, give me the Michigan, give me, as you said, the maize and blue. Was it hail to the victors? Everything else, give me the pleats in the pants, the 3 rows, give me Harbaugh, all of it. I'm taking the Wolverines.
Oh man, just that word Harbaugh is going to make me change my pick. I look at this game. I don't know. I think I see one team with an identity and one that hasn't quite figured out theirs yet. Michigan knows what they are, right? I mean, made it to the playoff last year. And what do? They funnel the ball to Blake Corum. They control the pace, play good defense, and then, have McCarthy just do enough to win. But does Penn State have an identity? I don't know. I mean, their offense looked pretty bad last week against Northwestern. Granted, weather was bad, but still, I mean, hasn't been anything to write home about. And their defense, I would also argue, has not really been tested, much like Michigan's. And I was looking more, I kind of really wanted to dive into the Penn State run defense just with this matchup with Corum, who has been one of the best running backs in the country this year. I found some really interesting numbers. So Penn State is number 1 in the Big Ten in terms of rushing defense, like total yards. They're ranked 14th nationally by Sharp College Football. They're 10th in defensive EPA per rush, but Pro Football Focus grades them 96th in rush defense. And I don't know why that is. Like, is this just an anomaly or a clerical error, or are they seeing something others aren't? Like,
I'm going to be honest. I question a lot of PFF's defensive grades. We'll get to that when we talk about the Hokies.
Yeah.
But I question their ability to correctly grade a defense.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I'm at. because a lot of numbers are pointing in one direction, and this is pointing in another. But I do think that there is some sort of legitimacy to that, and maybe to a small degree. I just feel like they haven't. Not only are they not playing good teams, but they haven't really faced any great rushing teams. Like you look at Purdue, Ohio, Central Michigan, Northwestern. Those teams are all bottom half in the country in terms of running or rushing. Of course, Tank Bigsby at Auburn, they did great to shut him down. But at the same time, I mean, when you play Auburn, you can kind of just load the box, and it's not like any of their quarterbacks are going to beat you over the top. So, so I think there's a good chance that Quorum finds just a little more success than some might think. And I think that gives Michigan a fairly comfortable win, as they are able to control the pace, and Penn State's offense really isn't able to do much. Also, keep an eye on this next stretch for Penn State. So they play Michigan on Saturday. Then their next two games are Minnesota and Ohio State. They'll be lucky to win one of those three, right?
Yeah. Is it at Minnesota?
I will say Minnesota and Ohio State, both those games are in Happy Valley, so that is an
Okay.
advantage. I probably could see them beating Minnesota, but I don't think they beat Ohio State or Michigan.
Penn State to Minnesota is quite the road trip. So I think they get lucky that they play that one at home. But it's whiteout for Minnesota, isn't it? I believe it is.
Oh,
They
yeah.
don't do very well in whiteout games. So we'll get to that one.
I will say 71% of the money's on Penn State right now. So take that information.
Wow.
71%. That could do with the fact that gambling is legalized in Pennsylvania and not in Michigan.
Could be. No, yeah.
No, it's legal in
No,
Michigan.
it's legal in Michigan. Yeah, no, it's legal.
It is. Huh. Okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
I
they're
think
just more degenerate gamblers in Pennsylvania.
I don't feel good about picking Penn State. I've kind of went off a lot more vibes this year, and it's been okay. At least on my personal picks, it's gone better. And just how teams what have you done for me lately? But we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah. Well, our next one is probably, it might end up being the biggest game of the year. It's the biggest Tennessee-Alabama game since the late 90s, probably. Game day's coming back to Knoxville. It's as big as it gets. Alabama, 7.5-point favorites, going to Rocky Top to play in what could only be described as, it's going to be an incredible atmosphere. College football doesn't get better. SEC at 3:30 on CBS. Rivalry game. It's been a rivalry dominated by Alabama, but if it's ever going to happen in Tennessee's favor, this is the year. 3:30 CBS, the over-under pretty high, 65.5. Brett, can Rocky Top take down Nick Saban and the Evil Empire?
Nope.
Simple
as that.
Oh, darn. Okay.
No notes. No notes.
No notes.
Nope.
No notes.
No.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't have notes for this one either. Mine comes out.
This line started at 14.5 for a reason. I mean, it's come down 7 points, and I think people were just hammering it because I don't believe maybe more than 2 touchdowns might be asking a lot, but I really think Alabama's still the better team here. Tennessee's competition, honestly, I mean, they've. I mean, I'm not going to say they haven't been impressive. I mean, they have, but their competition of teams that they've played so far just aren't like, I haven't really seen anything that's spectacular. So for me, I mean, the LSU game, I think actually at LSU was honestly, I think their best win. Home against Florida, I don't think Florida's that good of a team, to be completely honest. I think that they've kind of scraped away on some wins, and I don't think Anthony Robinson's any good. I think if you could find a way just to control him, I think they have nothing. So, and then at Pitt, I mean, they only beat Pitt by a touchdown, and I don't think Pitt's honestly that good. Virginia Tech just sucks. So that's why they beat Virginia Tech last week. So, I mean, honestly, like Tennessee, still a really good football team. I think they're deservedly a top 15, even top 10 team. But I still think Alabama's just a much better team. And if Milroe's still playing, that dude can play. I mean, I don't think that. I mean, as anybody, I honestly have not seen anything where Bryce Young and Nick Saban usually does not say anything about injured players, especially major players, until the game. I don't know if he's going to be playing or not. But
all Saban has said is that he's hopeful, but that's
yeah. And we're recording this.
Everyone
in
Tuscaloosa is hopeful, so
yeah. So I mean, and Saban won't say anything until you won't know until he comes on the field. I mean, that's just how he is. So, but Milroe, honestly, if he ends up being a starter for them going forward, next year too, that is, to me, one of the best running quarterbacks I've seen in a long time in college football. I mean, he is absolutely insane. And I do not think the Tennessee defense has any sort of answer on defense for that. I mean, I think he can do what he did when he came in against Arkansas. And I mean, I really think they're going to have a tough time with him. And Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is going to go. I mean, he's kind of slipped under the radar a little bit. I think I think that he could have had a Heisman year if he got a majority of the carries from the rip. I mean, what he did for Arkansas, I mean, good God, that was the best cover I've ever had in my life. I'm naming my firstborn Jahmyr Gibbs. That was unbelievable. But I don't know. I think that Tennessee's a good team. I root for Hendon Hooker, as all coaches do. I think he's done spectacular. And obviously this is his Heisman moment. If he goes and beats Alabama, I think he actually is probably the favorite, even over C.J. Stroud. I think if he goes and beat Alabama this week. But no, I still think betting Alabama here is the right move. You don't get Bama at single digits very often. And honestly, Neyland, it's a pretty crazy atmosphere. But I'm still not sold on the whole thing about them. So they're good. Don't get me wrong, but you don't make money betting against Nick Saban in primetime games.
I think this does solely come down to Bryce Young's health. Like if Bryce Young is healthy, Bama wins this by 3 possessions, right? That's not really a huge question. If he's not healthy and they go with Milrose, like 7.5, I think is a little too big. I mean, Tennessee's a much better team than Texas A&M. They had Texas A&M at home. And that was, I mean, they probably should have lost that game.
Yeah, the Texas
Alabama.
Go ahead.
For the first time in a while, like Alabama is doing stuff to lose football games. Like they're committing penalties. They have turnovers. They're not as dominant and as perfect as they have been recently. And if they don't have Bryce Young to help them offensively, we've seen 2 games against teams that probably aren't as talented. I mean, I guess Texas probably is as talented, if not more talented than Tennessee. But I mean, I don't know, man. I'm going to go Tennessee plus 7.5. That's a lot of points to get going up against a team that has question marks at the quarterback position. And it's the home team. So betting the numbers, not the teams. 7.5 point dogs, the Tennessee. I'm gonna rock with them. I got burned picking LSU last week. I felt stupid. That was an idiot bet, thinking that LSU fans were good enough to get up for an 11 a.m. game. They're not. They're fake.
And that their team was good at all.
Yeah, they're fake.
That was
team.
a real issue there.
I'm pretty sure Jaden Daniels had like 40-something completions for 330 yards, and they still only scored 10 points.
It was weird and wild. But I'm taking Tennessee, and I think Hendon Hooker he's not only playing his way into the Heisman conversation, he's playing his way into first, second round quarterback conversation right now. That's all I got. Tennessee.
So I'm in agreement with Brett here. I'm taking Bama at minus 7.5. And for those who are not privy to, I guess this is like the quote unquote rival type game. I mean, this is something that Tennessee probably believes that they're more of a rival of Bama than Bama even really thinks. Was it that Mad Men quote? I don't think about you at all. That's kind of Bama towards Tennessee in this game. It's actually referred to as a former Tennessee resident. They call it the third Saturday in October game. And just to provide a little historical framework here, last time that these teams played each other, both were ranked in the top 10, was number 1, 2016, where Bama absolutely boat raced Tennessee 49-10. And then prior to that, you have to go all the way back to those kind of T. Martin era level teams in Tennessee, where Tennessee was, I think they were like top 5, and Alabama was top 10, if not 10, and Tennessee won back in 1999, and I think in 96 as well during the Manning era. But that's kind of how far back you have to go where Tennessee was actually really relevant as a program. And that was when they had Peyton Manning, and B, when they had a program that was so put together under Philip Fulmer that they actually won a national title. And Tennessee fans will be the first people to remind you that they are still relevant because they've won a national title within the last 25 years. But that's besides the point. You already hit the narrative on the head here. Is Bryce Young going to be healthy or not? For those who did not really watch last week, the real thing is Bama just has depth, especially at the quarterback position. And a gentleman by the name of Jalen Milroe came in and was just this another otherworldly type athlete that Bama can just toss out there and be able to win games, albeit at that point, I probably don't believe that he was really ready to go. But this is giving him the added benefit of another week worth of practice where he's probably getting significant reps and preparation to be able to play this game, especially in a matchup with Saban, knowing that he needs to have a good contingency plan going on the road to Tennessee. So for me, I'm always going to just take the best team metrically as a default, especially when the game margin, and as Brett alluded to for this case, Bama rarely ever gets games with spreads less than 10. So I'm automatically feel like I'm getting value there. Albeit in this game, metrically, the value is kind of right at that 7.5 to 8 point margin. So I feel like if it's right at the margin, I'm just gonna default to leaning towards Bama. But if you really want to look at it, the PFF disparity with Bama, 94.8 versus Tennessee 83.9. The significant disparity is the Bama defense versus the Tennessee offense, and you would think that strength versus strength in this case, but that is a significant gap right there where Bama has a 93.6 defensive rating. I know you said defensive ratings are somewhat skewed, but I feel like that's when you have bad teams. When you have really good teams, I feel like PFF defensive ratings are actually pretty accurate. And like, oh yeah, I watched that team on Saturdays. They're good on defense. And then they end up being good on defense. Kind of like Georgia last year. Yeah, that meets the eye test. Tennessee at 83.9. So good Tennessee offense, but Bama's defense is just that much better. And defenses travel really well on the road if that's your bread and butter. The composite rating is unanimous across the board. Bama is statistically better across the board in terms of the composite. Granted, the ranking differential is pretty close. Bama is second, Tennessee top 10. They're sixth. SRS is another one. Bama is second. They're second to only Ohio State. They're at the very, very top. Tennessee, good, right there in the very bottom part of the top 10 at eighth. And this was when I was looking at it, is that 7.5 too much for Bama to cover? This is what just basically all the hairs stood up unanimously on the back of my neck at the same time. 89% of the public betting right now is on Tennessee. And that makes me run in the opposite direction of every single Tennessee value here. So Tennessee plus overconfidence equals disaster, I have in my notes here. So I am running away from the Volunteers in this instance. So just give me the past 10 years of dominance of Bama winning over Tennessee, and what we can probably equate to Tennessee undefeated. This is probably their loss by a significant margin.
Well, I love that you brought up the 2016 Tennessee team, because that team has been being brought up a lot because there's a lot of similarities, I guess, just with the situations going into that game. But I think that this Tennessee team is a bit different than that 2016 team. And the main reason why I think that is coaching. If you guys remember, the coach of Tennessee in 2016 was none other than Butch Jones. Who, what is he, like an intern for Alabama now still? Like, what is that guy even doing? Whereas Josh Heupel is one of the brightest young minds in college football right now, both from an offensive standpoint, and he also really seems to be maximizing the talent. But I'll say this. If Jalen Milroe is playing quarterback for Alabama on Saturday, not only will they not cover, they will lose the game. And I don't mean that as a disrespect to Milroe, because like Brett talked about, like, he is an incredibly talented, freaky athlete kid, but he's just not experienced enough to win a road game like that. And his offensive coordinator, my boy, Bill O'Brien, is not helping him at all. The scheme that they were running against A&M just did not work. Like, you cannot score only 24 point game on against A&M. That just isn't that good. And yes, their defense is the stronger point of that roster, but still, like, I don't know. It was pretty lethargic, not very efficient. And also, Jalen Milroe, looking at his PFF grades right now, which I do think PFF, their player grades are a little stronger than their overall team grades. Right now, he is grading out at a 49.5 overall offensive rating. That is 281st in the country out of all eligible quarterbacks in the FBS. And his pass grade is a 30 out of 100, which is dead last. Milroe just cannot make the throws right now. They're not setting it up well enough for him to get the easy throws. His receivers aren't experienced enough. If Milroe's out there, I just don't see it for Alabama. But again, I mean, if Bryce Young is out there, it's a completely different story because Bryce Young is number 2 in the country in terms of all PFF grades for quarterbacks. So, but I think that Tennessee has proven enough that they're capable to compete in this game regardless. I mean, Hendon Hooker last week had his worst graded game by PFF, and they still dropped 40 on LSU. So I see Alabama winning with Young. I see them losing with Milroe. I think it's more likely that Tennessee covers either way. So if we get clarity on Bryce Young later in the week and it looks like he's not playing, like if it looks like it's going to be Milroe, I would hammer that Tennessee money line because I think it's worth it. But in the meantime, just take him in the points.
Yeah, and there's a lot of NFL talent on the field in that game. And if you're interested in the NFL, there's no better place to bet on it than DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Anything you want, it's on the DraftKings Sportsbook. And if you're an NFL fan, this is the place to go. New customers, use our promo code SOS. You get bet $5 on any NFL team to win, and you get $200 in free bets if they do. Also, there's some fun stepped up same game parlays. Robert, talk to him about a good parlay for this weekend.
Yeah, check this out. In addition to these usual bets, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped up same game parlays. I, this weekend for the NFL, really love the Vikings. They are -3 against the Dolphins right now. Dolphins had a lot of question marks with both of their quarterbacks being concussed currently. Have no idea if one or either will be ready, and it's looking like Skylar Thompson, the undrafted rookie from my Kansas State Wildcats, will be starting quarterback. So, for example, DraftKings has a little quick same game parlay here where you can take Vikings money line, you can take Vikings first quarter money line, and the under 45.5. Because I do think it'll be low scoring if the Dolphins don't have much going offensively. You can get that at plus 475. So love the Vikings this week, especially with so many question marks at quarterback for the Dolphins.
Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code SOS to get $200 in free bets instantly if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code SOS only at the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See the show note for details. All right, fellas. Well, we've talked about Tennessee a lot this year. We've also talked a whole lot about NC State, and for good reason. They are one of the leaders of the pack, no pun intended, in the ACC. And they're playing a surprise team, the Syracuse Orange, who somehow, some way are still undefeated. And they're traveling up to Syracuse to play one of the sleepiest, toughest places to play in the ACC. A lot of questions around North Carolina State. I threw around the F word last week. The fraud. Threw it around. They snuck past Florida State. Also, Dave Dorn, you're on my list for punting at FSU's 35. When you were up 2 and the spread was 3, you're on my list, buddy. You're on my list. Almost lost your team the game. Devin Leary is a big question mark, right? Dave Doran said somewhere between 1 and 6 weeks. So whatever that means. Regardless, they travel to Syracuse. This game will be on the ACC network at 3:30. The over/under 44 for this one. Brett, who are we taking?
Right up my alley with 44 points.
Disgusting. Just a disgusting football game.
This is a hard one for me, honestly, because the Carrier Dome is a hornet's nest. I mean, it's a cursed place for any team to play. Even no matter how bad a Syracuse team is, they're going to slip up and beat somebody at the Carrier Dome because it's cursed. Jim Boeheim put a crux on that place for every sport, and it's just forever going to be that way. The thing is, Devin Leary's a big question mark because the NC State's backup. Forgive me, I forget his last name. I forget his name.
His name is Jack Chambers. He was the quarterback at Charleston Southern last year.
Yeah, he's really not good. Like, they're in a lot of trouble without Leary.
Do you want some real quick stats while you brought him up?
Yeah, go ahead.
I looked up what he did last year. Over 2,500 yards, 17 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. One of those interceptions was against Georgia. So maybe throw that game out. But he's not completely helpless. He's an athletic quarterback.
Yeah,
he's played football before, but
he's undersized.
They didn't seem to have a lot of faith in him in the fourth quarter.
He's a little undersized. He's athletic. He's kind of the opposite of Devin Leary, honestly. He's kind of like a frisky guy. He's gonna make a wild play, and then he's gonna make a really stupid play. That's just kind of, I think, the kind of quarterback he is. This one really hard for me, but I think it comes down to NC State's defense. Syracuse has played absolutely nobody when it comes to terms of their offense. Louisville, Connecticut, Purdue, UVA, and Wagner last week, where they had to put on a running clock in the second half with 10-minute quarters. No, they didn't they didn't do the running clock. People said they should have done that. They did 10-minute quarters. That's what it was. But yeah, I think I'm on NC State here still. I just really think, even though it's at the Carrier Dome, I want to pick Syracuse because I think it's awesome. I picked them to beat Purdue straight up, just on a whim, and it was electric. Probably one of the best money lines I've ever had in my life, just because of Garrett Schrader throwing an absolute dime with like 15 seconds left. Who would have thought that? But
it's not like he's done that before, right?
Yeah. But it's just NC State's defense. I think Syracuse is they're not going to know what to do. I mean, Sean Tucker, honestly hasn't had as great of a year as what he did last year, and I think that's also due to Garrett Schrader, having a little more help around him, being able to throw the ball more. They've had to rely on him as much. I'm not saying Sean Tucker's not as good, but I think NC State's defense, they have played a little better competition. They've been stout against everybody they've played pretty much, even Florida State last week, who is a much better team than everybody thought they were going to be. So I don't want to discount that win, even though they tried to blow it. I don't think people should discount the win against Florida State as they should have won. Florida State's, I think, actually in a much better spot than a lot of people think they are. So NC State is an underdog, even without Leary. I think this game, I could see it being like 17-7 NC State. I think the under here is definitely the play. So this is not my nutty pick of the week, even though the under is really low. I have one that's even lower that I'm going to talk about. But I want NC State.
I'm on the Wolfpack too. I'm scared of it. I'm terrified
I'm
of
not
it.
happy about it. I'm not happy about it.
However, if I told you even 2 weeks ago, you're going to get 3.5 points with NC State when they play Syracuse, you would take that in a heartbeat. Even before you would take it in a heartbeat. They're the more talented team by far. They're the most athletic team that Syracuse has played by far. I just don't think Syracuse is a team that's been tested. I think they're better than what we think, but also they're kind of just where we thought they would be, right? We knew the UVA game was a toss-up. It was a toss-up game. Purdue probably should have lost that game. They gave up like 450 yards passing. They won it. They beat a bad Louisville team, and then they've beaten UConn and Wagner. So probably roughly where they thought they would be. The slide is probably about to happen for Syracuse. It's not all bad news on the injury front for NC State either. They will get back one of their top wide receivers, Devin Carter, and their starting running back, Demi Sumu Karnbaye. think I nailed that. If I
I
did,
called him Karangbe the other week, and I don't think that's correct. So you did
I
better
think
than me.
Karangbaye, like Karangbaye, I believe. If it's not, my apologies. But the really good running back for NC State, they should have him full health. I think NC State's had 2 bad performances and they've survived them. I don't know if this is a team that's going to give you 3 or 4 bad performances in a year. So I'm going to go NC State. I know Leary's a question mark. He probably will not play this game because they do have the bye week. And it's the most Virginia Tech thing of all Virginia Tech things for Devin Leary to make his triumphant return on a Thursday night home game against the Hokies and throw for 350 yards. It's the most predictable thing possible. So NC State wins a close one. So
Speaking of being scared,
I'll take 3.5, but money line's the way to go here.
Speaking of being scared, the public is very scared, but they want to bet NC State. 78% of bets are on NC State, only 33% of the money. What does that tell you?
It tells me that people like the play, but they're putting their units elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I agree with them. I agree with them because NC State has not they don't look even close to Clemson's level. I'm going to be honest, they don't look at Wake Forest's level right now. Like they haven't shown that top tier ability like they showed last year. Yet. They haven't shown it yet.
Cuse -3.5 lock.
Wow.
That's where we're going. That's where this is going to end here now. And I'm going to tell you why. And I'm not even going to spend too much time on it, but I am getting the better overall team at home in the Carrier Dome. And for those who have not participated in ACC football, the Carrier Dome is the Bermuda Triangle of football. Teams venture up there. The compass rose just starts spiraling out of control. Things that you
Hell
thought
on earth.
were truth exist
Hell in a cell.
in a complete different level of a reality. It is a Stephen King novel for traveling road teams. And the biggest factor here is that, yes, NC State lost as I would consider to be as expected to Clemson, but they have yet to have that complete WTF loss. This is that loss. And all the factors are kind of marrying up to it. You already alluded to both of you alluded to the fact that the heavy betting volume, not necessarily the amount of money, but the volume is already heavily favoring NC State action. So that was the first thing I looked at. I was just like, why are teams believing that a affected Devin Leary quarterback team, because we don't know what that really looks like, going on the road to the Bermuda Triangle is going to just come out with a win here, with the margin being so low at -3.5. I just don't. I'm not buying it. And when I looked at just PFF and SRS, because composite rating, neither of these teams are ranked. They're both not that great of a football team. They're outside of the composite top 25. So I'm looking at PFF. I'm looking at Cuse as a team rated much higher than NC State, 94.8 versus 83.9. Cuse is a good football team. Believe it or not, well coached. Dino Babers, welcome back. He's like the Undertaker gif. He just rose up out of his coffin out of what, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, where he had the 1-win season. Like, congratulations to him. I can't wait till he gets another in keeping with, I guess, the current state of coaching extensions, gets $100 million extension for the next 45 years or whatever it is. But keep Babers in Cuse. The biggest disparity is the NC State offense. And at this point, it's looking at prior games, is already significantly, I would say, worse in comparison to the Cuse defense. It's a 77.6 to 93.6 comparison. That's a big margin there at such a narrow spread. And I'm getting what will be, at least at the maximum, a diminished Devin Leary. So let's just put it at that. The other one is just Cuse SRS rating. They're at a 15.2. They're ranked 14th. NC State is 18th at 14.58. So the only statistical improbability here is that Cuse wins, they cover, and they go 6-0. And that's what was just like they cannot go 6-0. That seems crazy to me. But you alluded to the slide. And that's where I was looking at. I was like, oh, this isn't the start of the slide. Next week is the start of the slide, because after this game versus NC State, they face at Clemson, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, Florida State, and Wake Forest. So I will buy another week knowing that was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks after that are likely going to be mounted for the Syracuse football program. So I will take this last week of value of getting Cuse as a somewhat marginally favored team at home in the Bermuda Triangle versus what I would consider to be the Bermuda Triangle of football programs, which is the NC State Wolfpack. So give me the Syracuse, was it Orangemen, -3.5 at home, in the worst place to play in sports, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, I've brought up before how NC State's defense is probably their greatest weakness, is defending a running quarterback. And so looking at the last two quarterbacks they face, which are DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson and Jordan Travis from Florida State, those two combined for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns on 21 carries. And so, yeah, that's not very good for State there. And Schrader is probably a better runner than both of them. You could argue Travis, but regardless, Garrett Schrader, running has always been his strength. I expect State to do well to limit Sean Tucker's effectiveness because they have been good against the run when it comes to running backs. So that'll put the game in Schrader's hands, which a year ago, that would have been a disaster for Syracuse, right? Because the guy just couldn't throw the ball. It's crazy. But Robert Anae and Jason Beck, like, they have truly unlocked all of his potential. And I guess something else. I don't even know if you could call what he's doing something he had the potential to do. Like, it's just beyond that. I don't know if they gave him super soldier serum or what, but because it's truly remarkable. Schrader right now is the 11th ranked FBS quarterback by PFF. And then you just add on the facts that Devin Leary almost certainly not playing, making this already ugly offense downright horrendous. And Syracuse making weird things happen in that godforsaken dome. I have no issue at all laying the points here. Give me Q's.
You forgot to mention that Garrett Schrader leads college football in mascots that most closely resemble the West Virginia Mountaineer mascot. So he's a true mountain man, the beard, the everything, and him running the football is just true glory in and of itself. So
yeah, mountain man for that Charlotte, alone, North Carolina.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yep. 4-star quarterback out of Charlotte, North Carolina. All right. Well, let's move on to another game that probably could decide who goes to the Big 12 title game, which isn't divisions. They just take the two best teams. And right now, the two best teams, you could argue Texas as well, but Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Well, they're winning. We'll leave it at that. They're winning games.
They might be the F word.
They might be the F word. All I need them to do is win 7 games, though. That's all we need. Oklahoma State +3.5 at Texas Christian. This game will be at 3:30 on ABC. The over-under is 68. Two offenses that are averaging exactly 46.4 points per game. Brett, Horned Frogs or Cowboys?
Easy one for me. This is my lock. Oklahoma State. I think they're just a better team all around. Personally, last week, they grinded out against the Texas Tech team that honestly I think found a better quarterback in Baron Morton than Donovan Smith. I think he's just a better passer. He actually moved the offense, where Donovan Smith is just you saw what he did against NC State and what he's done with everyone else pretty much. I just don't think he's that great. And I think they have a better quarterback in Baron Morton. Spencer Sanders, still I think he's one of the more kind of under the radar quarterbacks this year. He's been pretty phenomenal just because I think there's a good handful of quarterbacks this year. He's been great. I don't know. I've bet Oklahoma State all year, and I think a lot of people are kind of just staying away from them just because they're not sure with the departure of the defensive coordinator. and the defense not being as good, what's going to happen? Well, what's happened is the offense is just gone absolute nuclear. That's pretty much what's happened. And I think they've played some better teams. TCU, they've played. I mean, against Oklahoma. I mean, that was an impressive win, but turns out I was wrong about Oklahoma. They are absolutely buns. Hand up. Stupid idea by me. Thought they could recoup with Dylan Gabriel. They're terrible. What happened to them against Texas last week honestly might have really hurt their program in the long run. Like, that was pretty detrimental loss for them. I don't know. I just really like Oklahoma State as a football team. Gundy, it's hard for me to bet against Gundy. I think even when they're underdogs, even though they're away, I think they're just the better team overall. They can put up the points. Back-to-back really good wins at Baylor and Texas Tech with their scrappy Texas Tech team. That's not a bad football team by any means. I like Oklahoma State here a lot. Give me the points. Going with them. That's my lock of the week, though.
This was, I think, to date, the toughest game for me to pick because I've been burned by TCU twice this year, specifically their offense.
So it should be.
I've bet the under twice on TCU games, and they've hit both games right at the last minute. And, like, I don't know. I don't know what to do here. Oklahoma State, Brett, you said you've bet on them a lot this year. That's a good thing. In their last, 17 games, they're 13-3-1 against the spread. They're one of the best against the spread teams in the country. 7-0 against the spread in their last 7 on the road, and they're 7-1 straight up in their last 8 versus the Big 12. Offensively, I think this is going to be a shootout, just like every TCU game is, because TCU can't play defense, but neither can Oklahoma State. And I feel like if I have to trust one offense just to keep scoring, I'm going to trust TCU's more than I'm going to trust Oklahoma State's. So I'm going to go with the home team TCU. I don't love it, but I have to choose one, right? So I'm going to choose TCU. Again, we look at these and is like, all right, these teams aren't going to go undefeated, so when are they going to lose? For Oklahoma State, I feel like losing at TCU is a much more likely scenario than some of the other games left on their schedule. And for TCU, I think, losing to Texas or losing to Baylor, like in that rivalry game, like those are more likely losses to me than a home game against Oklahoma State. When your offense is playing as ridiculous as they are, and you're going up against a defense that, quite frankly, has underperformed this year. So I'm going to go with the Horned Frogs -3.5 at home.
I'm in agreement with Brett here. I looked at taking OSU +3.5 as almost my lock just when I originally looked at the spreads and the value this week, but I deferred obviously to the game we just talked about here. But OSU +3.5 presents the most value. When I looked at it a little bit closer, this is metrically as close to a coin flip type game that you can possibly see. So the one thing I wanted to look at was just the 3.5 and what the value of, I guess, in this point, a 3:30 afternoon home field advantage type game is in the Big 12. And I asked myself one question, and I'll leave it up for the group here if you want to have inputs or not, but is there actually an afternoon game Big 12 home field advantage program that exists? I couldn't think of any of them. Night games, maybe, but just afternoon games. You think about Oklahoma, Texas, like you don't think of any of these stadiums as presenting real significant home field advantage value. So the 3.5 threw me off, but I'll throw it out there real quick, round robin. If was a lightning round for any program that does have what you would consider to be a strong home field advantage.
I would say Baylor.
Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
Baylor, Oklahoma State, and Brett, where are you at?
Is like top 5 hardest places to play.
Where'd you say, Brett?
Kansas, of course.
Oklahoma State at night is top 5 hardest places.
Correct, at night, and this is what I'm saying. Like during the day, I always turn on. Was it FF1 or whatever Big 12 type game is, and I just feel like it's a very blasé type style environment. It's not necessarily something where I'm like, wow, that crowd is fired up.
It'll be popping. Like I think there's a little bit extra juice in this game. TCU's in the playoff picture now.
I understand that, but their fans, do they understand that? And that's what I'm kind of getting at here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
would
That's
say
true.
TCU is a hair more blasé, to use that wonderful word you just used.
hey, we got to increase the level of what is it? I don't know what our overall demographic is, but I have to imagine people are somewhere in that like collegiate level. Virginia Tech, maybe they're taking the GRE. I don't know, but that's a GRE word. So you're welcome, Virginia Tech level listeners here. But um, just going back to the metric, when I said it's a coin flip game, that's obviously the case. OSU at an 89.4 overall rating, TCU at 88. So it's very slim there, but there is somewhat of a statistical advantage with OSU defense versus the TCU offense. And even with the departure of Jim Knowles, they still have a strong defense there, with the OSU defense being an 88.4 and the TCU offense being an 82.5. So not strong, but it is somewhat of a slight advantage, with obviously such a narrow spread. That's something to consider. The composite ranking, they actually have both of these teams ranked. They're right neck to neck with each other, 15th and 16th overall, TCU and Oklahoma State, respectively. But the different metrics that aggregate that composite ranking have both teams kind of fluctuating back and forth. So that does show you that there isn't a consensus there. And then the SRS ranking. This is the one where actually I saw that TCU offered more value. They're 9th compared to Oklahoma State's 15th. But like I alluded to in the earlier part of the podcast, there is a bottleneck of teams ranked in that lower half of the top 10 all the way through to about the top 20. Um, and even when I looked at Action Network, I saw that only 55% of the public action was on TCU. So this is still, like I said, everything is pointing to a coin flip type style game. But I ultimately looked at the last 5 years of Mike Gundy. I like to look at the most recent performance as a program against some sort of, I guess, VIG that relates to this game. And this one for me was away underdog for Oklahoma State. And Mike Gundy, as an away underdog, is 7-1 in his last 5 years. That's 87.5% against the spread. The margin of victory is only at minus 1.4, so well within the 3.5 point spread. That's where the value is that he'll have his team ready to go. This is like you said, Sam, I believe this is a season defining type style game where you jockey yourself to be at the top part of the Big 12 to just give yourself a much added level chance. And I will go with the fact that Mike Gundy, he's been there forever. He's no longer 40. He's 55. He's a man. It's been 15 years since that infamous goal. He's been there a while. And I just believe that his track record of being competitive and fluctuating his game, I guess his program strategy of offense, and then now more so on the defense, I'm going to buy that more so than TCU under a first-year head coach and what I would consider to be a true difficult matchup. We saw Kansas last week, but Kansas was just as much as new to the party as TCU. This is a much more tested veteran OSU program. So give me the pokes. Give me the pokes on the road with the plus 3.5 spread.
The Big 12 sure does love to puzzle me with just an impossible line each week, don't they?
It's the toughest conference to pick this year.
It is. I mean, it's just so deep. I think my gut, I'm going to go with my gut, and my gut is telling me to take Oklahoma State in the points. I was pretty skeptical of them when we talked about them, what was it, 2, maybe 3 weeks ago? But they came through with a couple of tough wins, right? Like beating Baylor on the road and Texas Tech, both by double digits. Like those are gutsy wins. TCU, definitely the best team they've played yet. But I think that Ohio State has cemented them. Oklahoma State. Sorry, I wrote OSU. Dumb. They have cemented themselves as the best team in the conference besides Kansas State. I think that these next couple weeks will be pretty pivotal as we kind of like sort out the Big 12, and I think we might see a couple teams rise to the top, whether that is a Kansas State or a Texas or Kansas or whoever. So I think I would probably recommend staying away from this line, but for the sake of the pick, I am going to pick Oklahoma State. I'm going to take the veteran coach, the veteran quarterback, and the points. So I'm going to take Oklahoma State here.
Yeah, better QB. That's what I came down to. So Duggan is good. Don't get me wrong, but I think Sanders is the guy that's going to go into the game.
The 3:30 slate of college football has 3 top 20 matchups.
I noticed that too. There's
Pretty
almost no like Sam. You have the what is it? The individual pick for the night game. Is college football over as of 7:00 on Saturday? Is there any good
No.
game? We'll get to that. But
We'll get to it. We gotta take care of a nooner first. Take care of a good nooner. I'm not talking about a nice cold high noon. I'm talking
A noon
about
30er.
a noon 30er.
I almost said that.
this game will be televised live on the TV
On the television, on the telly.
on the TV feed at your local gas station is where this TV like that's where you can watch the Virginia Tech Miami game this week.
I mean, we got 2 7-Eleven brand teams playing in this one. The line I just checked, the line has moved to 7.5, minus 7.5 Miami. They're playing at Virginia Tech. This game's at 12:30 on. Look, okay, the game is on RSN. That's BS. None of you got that channel. Download a VPN. You can get a free trial. Put yourself in Seattle or somewhere, and you can stream it on ACCnetwork.com or on ESPN. Be smart about this. Don't complain about not being able to get the game in 2022. Okay, John Swofford doesn't own you anymore. He's gone. He can't hurt you. Get a VPN.
And if you end up with a virus on your computer, forget you heard this.
Yeah, you'll be fine. Just bash the computer and get a new one. It's not a big deal. Brett, who's going to win this game?
So, I mean, I just looked at the public. I mean, like, my jaw was hit the floor. The money, 87% on Virginia Tech, 60% of bets on Virginia. That's Jesus on Virginia Tech as well. That's crazy to me, personally. But is it? I kind of been sitting here, the last 5 minutes after I look at it. Is it that crazy? Miami, Tyler Van Dyke literally looks like the Monstars took his ability to play football like they did in Space Jam to all the best players of the 1996 NBA season. It is actually insane what has happened to him. Like it's like him and Brennan Armstrong were like QB1, QB2 going in, and Devin Leary, QB3 going into the season. All 3 of them have been pretty bad. Leary has been probably the best has definitely been the best out of the 3, but not by much. I mean, it's pretty astounding. I will say I think a lot of the money is on Virginia Tech because it's at home and they know like the stake of this rivalry and whatnot. But us with Miami at home has not been kind to us the last few years, as people have known. I mean, it's been pretty ugly. So I'm not sure Vegas is not seeing that. Maybe they don't care. I don't know. And I think Vegas and the public is also really looking at the last 2 games for Miami more so than the rest of them. I mean, obviously last week against UNC, not a good look. UNC wasn't even playing that great, and they still just couldn't get it done. May, honestly, they were getting pressure on May, and he was just kind of throwing balls up, and they just couldn't get them. So it just wasn't a pretty game, and it's a close game. And then obviously MTSU, that was insane. MTSU got beat by like 40 points by JMU, who is now ranked, by the way. Honestly, props to them. Wish I was in that position. But they got beat by 40 points to JMU, and they go out and just absolutely steamroll. I mean, steamroll Miami. That being said, I think Virginia Tech's offense, if they just let it fly, can beat this Miami team over the top. I really do. I think that it's just too many points at home for a nooner, even though it's for a sellout. I think there's too much going on. I think Miami, it kind of happens every year. Chris has talked about it the last 2 years in the podcast. Miami gets to a point every year when they just start going off the rails and they just literally stop caring about playing football. They do. It's happened every year since pretty much 2000, whenever Larry Coker retired, whatever that was. It's happened every year with every coach. When their season goes down the hole after they lose to Texas A&M and then they lose to Middle Tennessee State, they just kind of stop caring about playing football. And and that's kind of where they're at. Whereas I think Virginia Tech, it's been rough. I mean, they have shown that they still want to be there, and they're playing at home and they're getting a team that has a lot of stake in just the rivalry. So give me the points. Give me Virginia Tech. I don't like it. I took Pitt last week with a lot of points, and it still paid off. When I've placed a bet, well, I haven't placed a bet. It's not legal in Virginia, but when I've talked about the Hokies and taking them with the points or whatnot, I've gotten burned every time except Boston College. But I really do think we've got Miami in a really good spot here to actually at least cover the points.
Yeah, take away the teams, bet the numbers. Miami, historically, this is when they start to flounder off. They're playing at Virginia Tech. Miami 1-4 against the spread this year. Not very good. I like the Hokies plus 7.5. And there's two main reasons. And the reasons for that is because what Virginia Tech, especially offensively, has struggled with this year is what Miami's defense has struggled with. And the two things for Virginia Tech I think are the biggest are explosive plays on offense and not getting stuffed up the middle on every single running play. And if you look at Miami, they have been allowing explosive plays. They allowed a 7 against Middle Tennessee State and 6 against UNC. Pretty mediocre, especially compared to their talent level. And Middle Tennessee State's offense should not be getting 7 explosive plays against Miami. Defensive run stuff rate. So this is taking into account anytime the runner is tackled at or behind the line of scrimmage. They only did that on 18% of runs against Middle Tennessee State, which is in the 6th percentile so far for last year and this year combined. And then only 16% of runs did they stuff the runner against UNC. That's the 4th percentile. So we're talking at some of the worst run defense in terms of stuffing the run in college, in FBS football. Not good at all. Those are the things that Virginia Tech has struggled on. You get Malachi Thomas back. He helps you with getting some positive yardage running the ball. Seems like Grant Wells is starting to feel a little bit more confident downfield. Definitely looked more confident downfield against Pitt's man-to-man coverage. And Alan Tisdale being back for the Hokies could be pretty big for the run defense. That's my big worry here, is that the run defense is poor again. I brought up I don't really trust PFF's defensive run grades. Having your middle linebacker grade out that well and then giving up 6 touchdowns and 300+ yards, those things don't match. Be wary of any individual stat or grade in college football because it's a team sport. And I don't know about that. So I have a fear right now of Miami just running the ball right down Virginia Tech's throat, just like Pitt did. But 7.5 at home, sleepy time, 12:30 start. Give me the Hokies. I think they could win this game. I said they were going to win a game in the month of October. This is their best chance for it, so I'm going to go with the Hokies. Looks like we lost Brett. There's too much positivity for him to handle.
Excuse me, that part. Don't know exactly what, but I am going to respectfully disagree, and I have some really great notes to back up my taking Miami, I guess now at minus 7.5. And I have at the top of my list, metrics don't matter. Mm-hmm. Virginia Tech stinks.
So yeah, that's a good point.
Take a moment to absorb the gravity of the reality of that situation there. And then now let's look at the metrics. Just now that we all know, we are fully baked in understanding everything with the dynamics of the Virginia Tech football program. But PFF, it's in this case not even close. Miami overall, granted, they have not performed to their standard. They're metrically rated at a 91.8. Virginia Tech is at a 75.4. Huge disparity specifically on the Virginia Tech offense at a 63.2 and the Miami defense at a 90.7. So my real question is how often does the Virginia Tech offense the 50-yard line in this game. Over under out of total drives, how many times do you think that they actually get on to a scoring level where they can at least kick field goals? I'll leave it up to you, Sam, if you just want to ballpark it.
I have no idea. I don't think I want to know.
Anybody else want to factor in? I'm not even putting an actual number out there. I cannot buy a margin here where there is enough weight that I'm going to look at each of these teams. And granted, like I said, Miami has not performed well, but Virginia Tech is historically awful. And that's where the -7.5 comes into value here. And that's where I'm trying to hit home on here.
I mean,
for those
Chris, we talked about this last week, but updating it for this week, Tech is 6-13 in their last since the start of 2021 against the spread.
So bad. The
should have covered it last
SRS
week.
rankings. The SRS rankings show that Miami's not a good team. They're at 72nd overall. Obviously, the Middle Tennessee State loss was huge for them in terms of lowering them way down. Virginia Tech is 111th. They're one of the worst. Not only Power 5 programs, I think they're dead last, but they're one of the worst programs in all of Division I football. You mentioned the fade the public factor. Some people are actually just drunk enough to buy into the Virginia Tech value here at a lower spread. It's just statistically sobering to look at Virginia Tech and think that they can have any value in taking them against Power 5 competition. To me, there's no value, especially at a margin this low, in which case a touchdown and a half-point spread is value in college football, as we talked about earlier. This is a program that's still figuring out. They're in we talked about jokingly year 0. No, they're in year -2. Still, they're figuring a lot of things out as a program, not just the on-the-field stuff, but the behind-the-scenes stuff as well. I just don't see a scenario here where I can confidently take Virginia Tech to cover the spread in this game, even though that there's like little marginal improvements and they're getting some players back. I just feel like this is a game where don't overthink it until we prove it. Fade Virginia Tech in any spread, specifically here in like we saw it for the past few weeks. When they face talented teams, they have well underperformed the spread. West Virginia, Pitt, UNC. It's all been bad. And Miami, I would believe, at least from a talent standpoint, is way more talented than any of those other programs, which, by the way, West Virginia, UNC, Pitt, bad football teams. The common denominator was that they had better talent than Virginia Tech on the football field. And this Miami team is much more talented than those ones overall. So I guess disgustingly, I'm taking the Hurricanes. I hate it, but I can't see it. That's what I'm saying. There's no scenario where I see Virginia Tech not only covering the spread, but even having a remote chance of winning this football game. And that's sad.
You know, all it takes is a couple of feisty runs from Malachi Thomas for my optimism to come roaring back. I was so lethargic last week about the Pitt game, and I said I will not predict Virginia Tech to hang in there with a Power 5 team until they do. And you know what? They did enough. They did enough. Yeah, I mean, you know, Pitt ended up covering the spread, but if you really think about it, that had more to do with the fact that there was a blocked extra point, and then Virginia Tech then went for 2 to try to make up for the blocked extra point and then didn't get it. So realistically, they lost by 2 touchdowns, which they were made extra point away from covering the spread. But yeah, Malachi Thomas, he looked good. You know, I love the running backs where not only does he run hard, but he runs smart. Just has incredible vision, and you know, with an offensive line that isn't great, he can find the hole that, you know, maybe other running backs would not be able to find, and then he can burst through that hole and run hard through the tackles. The defense, you know, they were okay in spots, but they just allowed far too many explosive plays. You know, obviously those runs to Abanikanda, but it was just a really odd game because, you know, Tech had numerous, I don't have the exact number, but lots of tackles for loss or you know, where they'd stuff the run game for a yard or 2 yards, and then they just give up a 50-yarder, and it was just purely explosive. And I don't see an explosive running back like that. I don't see a running back like Abanikanda in Miami's backfield. I just don't. Because even going into that game, Abanikanda had already had multiple runs of 70-plus yards going into that game. I think the news about Alan Tisdale that came out today being available to play for the first time all year at that will linebacker spot, which is one of the outside linebackers. If you're playing NCAA football, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he would be listed as ROLB, right? Is that correct? Or would it be LOL?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. ROLB. So that outside linebacker spot, having Tisdale there, he's shown flashes of productivity before. And though he may not be as talented as a Jaden Keller or a Jaden McDonald, he can bring like a veteran presence that those two redshirt freshmen can't. Those younger guys at that linebacker spot have had issues, especially last week, making the right reads and shooting the right gaps. And they can end up creating huge holes. And I think that happened a lot last week, where the freshman just shoots the wrong gap and then suddenly the whole right side of the field's wide open. Tisdale, as a veteran player, shouldn't have as many of those issues. So I think if the Hokies can just keep everything in front of them defensively, especially against the run, then, maybe force Van Dyke into a couple mistakes, given his inconsistencies, I think they'll have a good chance to win. So I see the Hokies covering, and I would even strongly consider that money line with the Hokies at home. Miami only playing their second road game of the year. That's important to keep in mind. They've been this bad at home. Just imagine how bad it is on the road.
Well, they don't have any home fans. I mean, their quarterback said he hates playing at home. So maybe we wish this was at Miami.
That's true. But at least when they're in Miami, they don't have to deal with, 66,000 fans booing them.
Yeah.
And my last point here, Miami has not covered a spread since week 1. They have lost their last 4 spreads. They played
Bethune-Cookman week 1.
Right. They covered against Bethune-Cookman, and they haven't covered a spread since.
Yeah.
Fade them.
Yep.
Yeah, we covered only one as well. So
yeah. Well, I just want people to know, even though like 3, once Ed's picks get in there, 4 out of 5 of us are going to pick Virginia Tech. We're picking Virginia Tech against the spread. Tech could still lose this game close. I think that's very likely. But Tech could win this game by 3 touchdowns and still be a bad football team. Like, I don't think that changes with 1 week to a Miami team that looks, quite frankly, poorly coached. They're injured.
Yeah, that's the thing.
They don't have their offense figured out at all.
This is another bad football team. That's the thing.
Yes. This is it's another ACC coastal team. What can we say? All right. Well, we'll see what happens there. Hopefully the Hokies can right the ship. Brett, let's start rounding it out. What is your nutty pick of the week? And does it have to do with the Idaho Vandals?
No, it does not. But we talked about my pick last week. Under 35.5 hitting by 20. No, under 36.5 hitting by 21 points, I believe. Or 20 points. Insane. That was hilarious. Too bad I was on a bye week because it is absolutely the best betting the under for them. But I have another one that might be even worse. I am thinking under 38.5. No, under 38 now. New Mexico versus New Mexico State. My God, are these teams bad?
I was hoping this would be your nutty pick so bad.
New Mexico State is averaging 265 yards of offensive game. I think Virginia Tech's right there with them, but that is we know that is horrible. When New Mexico State's talent level and the teams they're playing are really bad. I mean, they are just not a good football team. And guess who's the coach of New Mexico State? Anybody know?
That would be Jerry Kill.
Yes, that is Jerry Kill.
It is Jerry Kill.
Oh, my God.
Cardiac killer, baby.
Cardiac kill.
But anyway, New Mexico actually one of the better teams in college football defense, 33rd in the country. So honestly,
they're an improved team.
New Mexico okay team. New Mexico State, really bad team. New Mexico State, really, really, really bad offense versus a competent defense. I think the under, this is one of my favorite unders of the year, honestly. I've just been memeing unders, honestly, for Iowa because they honestly hit and it's funny. But this under actually makes sense here, under 38. I think New Mexico State might not score at all. So, yeah, under 38, New Mexico State. 8 o'clock.
Going to be a great one. Tune in for it. The Battle of the Rio Grande. Dom, you're going to take over for Ed's Southern Deep Fried Game of the Week. I always screw that up. Yes.
Hey guys, coming in at Southern Fried.
Oh, Dom, you're having some mic issues right now, man.
All right.
Sound like you're
communicating.
Oh no, it still sounds
bad. Oh wow.
Turn your sound up. Turn your
sound off. No.
That's not working.
Still not good.
Nope. All right, we'll figure that one out. We'll go. I'll do my graveyard shift while we figure that out.
We apologize if your ears are currently bleeding.
Yeah, just turn it down on your dial or whatever you're dealing with.
Or if you think there's a UFO, that's not it.
Maybe there is a UFO. Maybe he got abducted. I'm not. Look, it can't be weirder. We're already talking about New Mexico State. We might as well get really weird. Let's keep it
Area
weird.
51.
That literally looked like Dom was in some sort of hostage video where he was trying to give like his unemotional like script of he was okay, like tell his family he's fine. He had the Hokey Stone backdrop, and behind the scenes there's just a bunch of people yelling at him. So do we need to check in on Dom? Is he okay? Are we sure?
Let's
Dom's
go
good.
through the picks and then we'll send a message in Slack or something. We'll figure it out. I'm gonna go my graveyard shift game of the week. San Jose State -8 at Fresno State. Fresno State is a god-awful football team. They went from preseason favorites in the Mountain West to, oh my gosh, they just lost to UConn. Jake Haener, he's still out. Pretty gruesome leg injury. Since Jake Haener, their quarterback, went out against USC, the Bulldogs are 0-3. They're averaging 17 points a game. They lost to UConn. This is not a good team. San Jose State, meanwhile, 4-1. Only loss on the year was by 8 points at Auburn when they were leading at halftime. And San Jose State, really good defensive team, number 20 in EPA per pass and number 34 in EPA per rush. Yes, I know it is not going to be at San Jose State. The game is going to be in Fresno. I don't think it matters. San Jose State -8. The Spartans are going to have another really good season and potentially could compete for the Mountain West title. Chris, your captain's choice of the week.
I've been all over the map with this pick. I'm going back to the well with the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Right now, -6.5 at Kentucky. I know a lot of people are looking at Kentucky last week. Obviously, South Carolina won, and it was all predicated upon the fact that Will Levis was not available for the Kentucky Wildcats. Their Big Blue Nation did not have their quarterback. But to me, this is just, I'm like at a touchdown value or less. Yes, Mississippi State is the road favorite in this case, but they're 4-1-1 this year against the spread, an average margin of victory, and they've played some significant SEC football games of 17.5 points. I alluded to it before the season even started that Mississippi State is a good veteran football team this year. Looking at the metrics, PFF, there is a slight team advantage to Kentucky, but there's some kind of marginal talent, offense versus defense metrics there where I think there is some value in looking at the Mississippi State offense. And SRS kind of backs that up where Mississippi State, comparative to their schedule, is ranked 7th, top 10, and Kentucky 44th. And that's a huge gap. And I think my eyeballs confirmed that when I saw Kentucky and their inability. And to me, it's like, if the difference of you being a good versus pretty poor SEC program is having or not having Will Levis and his mayonnaise eating habits, To me, I don't see the value in taking Kentucky once again for a spread of at least under 7 in this instance. The composite rankings that I alluded to earlier also has Mississippi State top 10, they're 10th, Kentucky unranked. And just when in doubt, go with the Pirate captain himself, Mike Leach. I took them earlier in the season. They had that somewhat disappointing fourth quarter loss, because at least against the spread in that game. But I feel like they're kind of hitting on all cylinders right now. Mississippi State is a good program. So when in doubt, take them as a less than touchdown favorite against a team without at least, I don't know if Will Levis is going to be back, but he's at least going to be injured in this football in this football game. So just give me the overall better program with just a better outlook. So
and Kentucky just looked soft last week in South Carolina. I mean, they just got the.
They didn't look good. We all know that South Carolina is not a world beater type program, and
they've been playing physical all year. And it's just like when Levis was gone, it's just like, well, season's over, I guess.
Yeah, the wind was just completely taken out of their sails.
Yeah, Will Levis is just, I think he's in some sort of recovery chamber, if you want to get in like a hyperbaric chamber, but his is full of Duke's mayonnaise. He's just resting in a sea of mayo. For those who don't know, Will Levis is the guy who apparently likes to just eat mayo straight out of the jar. I have to bet against that as well.
Yeah, he's just in a cryogenic mayo chamber doing curls because he's obsessed with his arms.
Cryogenic mayo chamber, new band name. Coined it right here.
Nice. Okay, so for my free money bet of the week, Sam, you don't understand. Ooh,
there it is.
That was good. Oh wow, cha-ching, baby. I thought my computer was breaking when I heard that in my ears. You don't know how tempted I was, Sam, to take USC plus 3.5 at Utah just to make you mad, but
no, it wouldn't make me mad. I think it's a good pick. I think Utah got exposed a little bit versus an athletic quarterback. It's hurt him twice this year.
Yeah,
Caleb Williams can run.
I just can't definitively make that free money. There's just a small part of me that's like, oh, yeah. Utah's really good at home. But so the real free money bet of the week, I'm going to instead go against the sportsbook projection models again, because I feel like we're still finding holes, and that is for Kansas plus 9 at Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I mean, I don't understand how you can give them that sort of a number after that horrendous performance last week. I understand they're getting Dylan Gabriel back, more than likely. So that's part of where that comes from. But I think it's important to note just how bad Oklahoma has been compared to their expectations. And so ESPN's Bill Connolly, the guy who does the SP Plus metric, tweeted this out. He said the reason SP Plus has been slow to catch up on OU's badness is the same reason the sportsbooks have. It's almost unprecedented. And so he posted a screenshot from his article that says the largest underachievement versus the spread in a 3-game span for a once ranked team in the last 30 years. Oklahoma has the 5th worst of all teams. They are minus 98 against the spread in their last 3 weeks. That is abysmal. And then Kansas here. So this line has actually shifted from Kansas plus 7 to Kansas plus 9 after there was news reported that quarterback Jalen Daniels was going to be out for the season with a shoulder injury, which of course Jalen Daniels responded to that tweet by saying, this is news to me. So who knows? But even if Jalen Daniels isn't out there, our boy Jason Bean balled out last week. And Sam, I got to call you out for a pretty out-of-pocket tweet where you said that he was better than any quarterback that Virginia Tech has had since Tyrod, which is that's a little bit of an overreaction, I think.
How many 4 or 5 games for Gerard Evans that were good?
Hendon
other
Hooker,
than that,
perhaps? I don't know.
Logan Thomas is better than Jason Bean, whatever.
Dude,
it was half a game. My point is that it was an overreaction.
I would give anything for Virginia Tech to be able to throw the ball like that. And Kansas's backup came out and did it.
Right, that's what I'm saying. This kid's very good. I think Sam's tweet was an overreaction. I just wanted to point that out on the podcast just so we can laugh. But
it's anger. It's anger.
Yes. Regardless, quarterback is very good. Oklahoma is not. I would even consider Kansas money line, but Kansas +9, even though it's on the road, don't sweat that at all. That is free money.
That's a bold free money pick. It's a bold free money pick, but I don't hate it. Kansas has a lot of good stuff going for them. Fellas, that's an hour and a half. That's a long podcast. But you know what? I think we gave people a lot of good information. These are some really, really tight games, and they're going to be really fun ones. Week 7 should be a good time. Robert, sign us out, buddy.
Go Hokies.